about a month before the invasion started, Victoria Manska, who's joining the conversation now, started an open source startup. But like so many other people, the conflict quickly put a stop to her efforts. So Victoria and her team shifted gears and decided to focus on creating one of the first refugee centers here in Warsaw. And today they have 5 locations that are operating here in Warsaw and in nearby Radom, if I'm right. We actually had a chance to visit one of the locations earlier this morning, and they are doing truly incredible work. More than €500,000 have been raised for refugees thanks to the effort of Team Ukraine Love. Victoria, thank you for the work you do. Thank you for being here with us. The whole world is watching, the whole world is listening. So let me ask you this. What do you want everyone to know about the people you're helping here in Poland?
First of all, thank you very much for coming, and I would like you to look around. You're today in a room with strong, smart, incredible women who had to get away from war, who had to be dislocated and be present and carry this niche of supporting Ukraine from the outside. Over here, besides the refugee houses, besides the enormous, more than 400 tons of humanitarian aid, which was supported and sent to Ukraine, we are actually supporting as many refugee houses as it's possible. We have already started making the schools for Ukrainian children and Polish one in order to bring the equality, as there is no difference between the children. They are all ours. You know, it is very important to highlight that, guys, we are union. And of course, with every single bombing, they are taking away the leftovers of our Soviet past. And with every single child being educated on the territory of European Union, we're becoming more united. And all of those children will come back, will build stronger, better Ukraine on those ruins of our past. You know, I do believe that pledging summit is very important, since amount of work which we are currently doing it's so little. I'm coming every single day, I'm speaking to those women, and I know that there is a lot of work to do. So yes, if we can support by simple donation, by simple story, it's the list what is possible to do today. Thank you for inviting me to speak.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for that, Victoria. President von der Leyen, to turn to you now, many across the globe are becoming increasingly aware of the wider impacts of this conflict on the global food supply. In fact, there are estimates of up to 500 million people potentially facing food insecurity as a result. So with that in mind, what actions can the EU and the European community take to prioritize this issue and basically prevent or certainly minimize a global food crisis?
Yes, indeed. I mean, besides the incredible human suffering that this war brings along and the unbelievable atrocities that we see, there are knock-on effects, for example, on global food security. Ukraine is basically the wheat chamber of the world. And now it is becoming more and more difficult for the farmers in Ukraine to sow and to have the next harvest. And if you see the figures, how many countries in the global south, for example, are dependent on the export of wheat to their countries from Ukraine, it's a very, very serious problem. And it is even more serious because yesterday the Prime Minister, Denis Shmyhal, told me in Kyiv that Putin's army is now systematically bombing warehouses where grain and wheat is stored. Or, for example, Ukraine needs to export the wheat by ships, usually. So he's blocking these ships in the Black Sea, therefore increasing the pressure on the food system. So the first thing that we've offered is, listen, Ukraine, then take the land route and we will create so-called green corridors, that these transports for wheat can go along through different borders. It's a longer land route, but at least get the wheat out and get some income in without any difficulties through these green lanes. We do everything possible to support the Ukrainian farmers who need everything to sow, that they can do their work under very difficult circumstances because of their safety. But they are willing to risk their life really to produce the wheat that the world needs. We are giving now 2.5 billion euros into the global food security, but I know more will be needed. Because if I look at the numbers, I mean, Ukraine is a major part of the World Food Programme, for example. So this is one of the ugly knock-on effects of this horrible war, and one more reason to do everything to end this war.
Madam President, thank you. It's such an important point she's making. I was listening to the BBC and they were saying the conflict in Ukraine is impacting Egypt because they depend on bread and they're not able to get the wheat, and so prices are going up. So these are the ripple effects. They go right across the world, and that's why we all need to stand for Ukraine and take this seriously. Prime Minister Trudeau, to double down on what Madam President was just saying, the World Food Programme had already warned that 2022 would bring catastrophic hunger, and that I'm also learning, and this I didn't know, that Russia and Ukraine account for 12% of all food calories. So to have these countries now mired in conflict and their importance to the global food supply chain, what do countries need to do? What does the international community need to do to bolster hunger relief efforts, particularly to vulnerable regions?
Yeah, thank you. First of all, this just emphasizes once again what a terrible, horrific mistake Vladimir Putin made in choosing to launch this war. Because not only is it causing horrific impacts on Ukraine, on Europe, but as you say, it's affecting the world. In my conversations in terms of pulling people together for this pledging conference, but also just gathering support for Ukraine through the UN and elsewhere, my conversations with leaders in South America, in Africa, in Asia, across the global South, there is a deep, deep concern that the energy insecurity and specifically the food insecurity that is being compounded, that, as you say, was already there for this year, but is going to get so much worse, requires us all to stand up and work together, supporting organizations like UNICEF and particularly the World Food Programme that is heavily dependent on wheat from Ukraine, to try and replace that. And countries like Canada that can continue to grow and grow more will need to do that to compensate. But it's going to be a very, very difficult year. And I think that it underlines how important it is that, yes, we act to support people now in concert, in working together, but also that we understand that global instability, that attacks like this on the sovereignty of another country, conflicts wherever they happen around the world, have an impact that goes far beyond just the people and the civilians in the line of battle. It goes to our entire global system, where we have to stop allowing conflicts and wars to undermine the progress, the support, and the advances we're seeing across the global South and around the world in creating more resilient opportunities for everyone. This is a big step back in the march towards a fairer world for everyone. That's why the world is coming together, not just in this conference, but in support for Ukraine and standing against Russia's terrible, terrible decision.
Ms. Prime Minister, thank you. Hugh, turning to you. Since this invasion began, global citizens' message to world leaders has been pretty clear. Immediately support an emergency food response in Ukraine, assist all refugees that are facing food insecurity, and ensure global food stability. So Can you speak a little more about the specific actions that policymakers need to be taking in the coming weeks on these, because there's not just one, on these interrelated issues?
Absolutely, and I think that you've done a really good job at already summating the challenge ahead of us. So I want to focus, if I can, just for a few seconds on 3 practical solutions. I think the first solution, and Prime Minister Trudeau alluded to this, is that the World Food Programme have an urgent $590 million appeal right now to support the 3.1 million internally displaced people, those affected in Ukraine, who are currently facing food insecurity. So that's the first objective that we all need to rally around. The second thing that we can do is we need to open up food stocks to ensure global food supply consistency and predictability. And this is particularly a message for the United States and China to consider releasing grain stocks to support humanitarian efforts if necessary, because it's the only way we can create the sort of predictability that's necessary to make sure that markets do not fluctuate, because ultimately it's the poor that pay the highest price. And currently, we've seen already a 12% increase in global food prices already. And the third thing we need to do right now is we need to prevent 500 million people from facing food insecurity, particularly across sub-Saharan Africa, by supporting smallhold agricultural farmers to have the inputs they need ahead of the upcoming planting season. Those 3 policy prescriptions, I believe, will have a significant impact on ultimately ensuring that we can keep this issue under control, while ultimately there is an opportunity for peace to prevail and the war to end.
There's indeed much to be done, Hugh. Thank you.